Joining me now for more on the investigation is Erroll, former Deputy Director of the California Office of Homeland Security, also an FBI Special Agent. He is now the Associate Director of USC's Homeland Security Center. Erroll, thank you for joining me. I'm glad you're here because I want to look at the facts with you. In 2011, Tamerlan Tsarnaev, he gets investigated by the FBI after Russian intelligence warns him that he's interested in radical jihadist propaganda. In 2012, he flies out of the U.S. under his own name, goes to Russia, spends 6 months in Dagestan, then returns to the U.S. again under his own name. How does that not raise a red flag?
Well, first of all, you can trust me that the United States and the FBI, when they were asked to participate in this investigation and interview this young man, certainly exhausted every lead that they had. And there are certain thresholds that would have to have been crossed for him to have been deemed suspect or attached to some other organization or having been radicalized while he was abroad. Now, the challenge we have, Alex, with these homegrown violent extremists are the fact that they don't often raise red flags. Something has happened, certainly in the 10 years he's been in the United States and perhaps his trip abroad, that provided this, if you will, cognitive opening where he was susceptible to an ideology that led to action this week in the Boston bombing.
You know, I've used the phrase hindsight's 20/20 a couple of times in this case, but is what we're talking about, is that otherwise normal behavior that just seems loaded with meaning now because of the bombing?
Well, we'll have to now, again, look at the brothers, look at all their social networking, determine where they believed that they had an ideology or this grievance could be acted out, and most importantly, we're able to stay off the radar screen. Some of the things that they did, and at least in some of the activities that were reported by friends and neighbors, they were very, very good at staying covert, and they picked an area they knew well. They were certainly homegrown. They had lived in the area for 10 years, and this is problematic.
If someone gets investigated by the FBI for radicalization or suspicion of that, does their name enter some database, stay on a database that would start some sort of an alert if they travel overseas?
Well, I can't speak to that exactly. It would depend on how much activity is going on, whether they're part of an active case. You know, all of this is very situational, and intelligence is coming in constantly. The Joint Terrorism Task Forces are working, and they would have had to have done something to cross that threshold, again, to raise the attention that would garner an investigation or a surveillance and other interviews.
Okay, what about the bombing, Erroll? Is this something that, based on what you've seen in the past, is this something that lone wolf terrorists, a couple of guys, a couple of brothers would be capable of doing, or was it too sophisticated? I mean, they pulled this off. They had both bombs go off, in all likelihood, exactly as planned, and in all likelihood from some remote location.
Well, Alex, that's a very good question. I don't know how difficult it is to build a pressure cooker IED. I'm not convinced that they have acted alone. Certainly they plotted this, although it wasn't very sophisticated, it was at least coordinated. They, again, as I mentioned, have lived in the area for 10 years. We're going to be now exploring all of their social networking, looking at their websites, their emails, phone conversations, anybody they talked to for an extended period of time to see if, in fact, they weren't part of a larger cell, a bigger plot, and resourced and planning mechanisms in place for them to do what they did. I'm not convinced that they've acted alone.
Okay, I don't think anyone is quite yet. There's an investigation underway. Erroll, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
The case of the Boston bomber, how close